If you could peer inside the mind of an artist, what would it look like? Would it be colorful, chaotic, quiet? Would it be expansive and open, dark or light? Today, I meet the woman who might be able to tell us. Hi, I'm Sarah LaBrecque, and this is the Purpose Pioneers from Positive News. In this podcast, I meet the leaders of some of the UK's most inspiring organizations to uncover how they're turning their ideals into action. In each episode, we'll explore 3 defining moments that reveal their journey of putting purpose into practice. The Purpose Pioneers is supported by Triodos Bank. So today I have Eline van der Vlist joining me. Eline is the CEO of Space, a social enterprise that supports the visual arts by providing affordable studio spaces for artists in the UK. Welcome to the podcast, Eline.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, Eline, what is Space and how does it work?
We are a charity. We are a London-based arts and educational charity, and our mission is to make space for art. And we do this in 3 ways. We have Space to Create, which is our artist studios. That's the core, and that is also how we are funded, in that the artists pay the rent. It's cost-based rent, so it's as affordable as we can make it. Secondly, we have a artist support program. So we support the artist. It's an artist development and support program. And thirdly, we have our Space to Engage, which is our public program, an exhibition program, which is currently in Ilford.
Right. So Space was founded in London in 1968 by 2 artists who recognized the urgent need for affordable studio spaces. And today it supports over 900 tenants across 21 studios in London and Colchester, who use these spaces to paint, sculpt, photograph, etch, basically follow their calling as artists. So, Eline, can you give us a brief history of how Space began? So who were those founding artists back in the 60s and what did they do?
Space was established, as you said, in 1968 by the artist Peter Sedgley and Bridget. They had a dream of a studio and a wish for a community to come together. I think they were looking for buildings also to make their art that couldn't be made at home anymore. Art was getting larger in the 60s, as you may or may not know. So rather than squat, which was another way of, getting spaces, they approached the then GLC, now the GLA, and were given a building in the docks at St. Catherine Docks. So it's an old abandoned warehouse. The docks were quite empty at the time, and made it into artist studios. And that's how it all started. And the artists there, even then, there was a high demand for those spaces.
So did they attract a large group of artists? Did it sort of grow from there?
Yes, it did attract a lot of artists. And even at the beginning, there was already some kind of waiting list for who could have the studio spaces. And if you look at the old movies, which I always love to do because they have some footage from that time, you can see how they are experimenting with things like foam that you can see floating up. They made works in the water with big, floating things that would be very ephemeral artworks, very much of the 60s, big helium-filled inflatables. And it all looks very gorgeous, and it all looks very not health and safety conscious, maybe, but extremely exciting. And actually, it looks really fun. And that's the start of something that has been hounding us ever since, is that the artists make this space a livable, workable, exciting space to be in. And then the other people, the developers, move in like, this is an interesting place. And out we were after 3 years to find another space, which was Martello.
So just thinking about, this type of art that you're describing, which is floating or helium filled or like big, right? So without the actual physical space to create it, it's not possible, right?
No, you can't make this at home. This is not something, and it's not just, I mean, these are examples of really kind of big installations, inflatables and the floating works but also larger paintings. You can't make those at home. You know, there's a limit to your kitchen table, or to even keep it there, or to, you know, to splash on the wall, to just make a mess. And the sounds, or there are all different reasons why you'd want it in a studio and not in your house.
Right. For an affordable price as well.
For an affordable price, yes. And that's always the big question, isn't it? What is affordable? Because how affordable is defined varies a lot. So what we define as affordable is cost-based. We price from the bottom up. So this is the costs we have, and you know, that's what we need to get in rent to cover the costs. And we build in a slight, you know, margin for if there's a roof leak or if there's something happening. But that's how we define affordable. Well, there is obviously a lot of affordable workspaces which just say we are 20% below market rent, which to us would still be unaffordable.
And how are you sort of funded? What is the business model of Space?
So we have two streams. Our programs are Arts Council funded. So we are an Arts Council NPO. That's part of the National Portfolio Organization. That's in recognition of the quality of the programs we do. And the core of the of Space is in a way self-funded. So we either lease spaces, we own some buildings, and we then rent them out to artists at a rent that is all inclusive. So we don't do service charges on top, or, you know, let them pay for water or what have you. Bar electricity. Only electricity you use in your own studio you get paid for separately. The rent is set at a affordable level in that it's cost-based.
So you joined Space in 2022.
Yes.
So what does it feel like to head up an organization that has such a backstory, such a rich history?
I always say I'm standing on the shoulders of those who came before me. And even the staff here is, you know, I've been here 4 years now, and I still feel sometimes I get introduced as the new CEO. A lot of the staff have been here for 20 years. I was a lawyer for 9 years. I studied law and history of art at the same time. And so I was a lawyer in Amsterdam for 3 years, then in New York for 3 years, then in London for 3 years. And then I decided to pick up art again. And in 2004, I switched everything around, and I did my MA in contemporary art and worked with artists from that moment onwards and never looked back. But in a kind of weird way, at Space now, everything comes together, the two strands.
Are you an artist yourself?
I'm not an artist. I'm a curator. No, I'm not an artist. I'm married to an artist. I think that's enough art for one household.
Yes. So thinking about the kind of trajectory of your career, your earlier work, how everything has kind of come together, and then with what you now do at Space, this is a big question, so bear with me.
Yeah.
But what do you see as your purpose?
What do I see as my purpose? I think it is a realization that these spaces are incredibly fragile, incredibly needed, and someone needs to protect it. And I'm not doing that single-handedly. I've got, you know, a whole organization behind me, and there is a network of organizations like Space in London. And because we're all kind of fighting the same fight, we try to also do that together. But yes, I see the purpose as to protect this creative space. It's those spaces that are really invisible. And I think that's the interesting bit about artist studios is most people have never been in one. Most people have no idea what they look like. And actually, even in the art world, even when I did my MA, they're kind of assumed to be there, but you don't really visit them. And you don't even
Hmm.
think about it. We all enjoy the output. We all go
Yeah.
to, I mean, I hope everyone enjoys the output, but you see public sculptures in the street. You see, you go to museums, artists work in schools. There's little galleries. There are, all kinds of spaces. But you actually don't always think, oh, where was this sculpture made? How did that happen?
In this podcast, we ask everyone to share 3 defining moments about that are centered around discovering their sense of purpose and putting it into practice. So the first is a kind of tipping point moment where it may have really hit home that you needed to go down this path, or that this was your purpose. So, Eline, have you experienced any sort of tipping point moment?
I would say it was more gradual than that, even for me. Not really a single moment. It was more like this growing realization. Because even when I started at Space, and this is maybe when you start a new job, you think you know what you're going in for. And even then, it turns out not to be exactly what you thought. So even having worked in the arts for such a long time at that time, I had not been in an artist studio other than in my husband's. So that's one. And then to realize how this whole ecosystem, if I can use that word, functions, this creative ecosystem, the London we love, or the London I love, is built on this, and we don't know it. So that kind of, what makes this possible? What makes this city kind of interesting? And then realizing how invisible and precarious those spaces are that allow this to happen, that allow artists to kind of work.
Yes. So can you tell us a bit more about that precariousness? So it, in terms of, so if I was an artist and I did need space, what I created was either physically large, or, I need the mental space and the space separate from my home in order to properly get in the creative zone. Is that very difficult to find in London?
It is, and not just in London. It is really difficult to find. We have about 99% occupancy. That is for, anyone running properties, which, essentially is what it is, enormously high. I mean, the kind of the few percentage points that are not occupied is because people change studios. So there's a month where, where one moves out, the next one moves in. It's like, it's that tight. We have a waiting list. We don't really do work with a waiting list, but we have a registration list of people who've registered with us for a studio. And I think it's 5,000-6,000 people. Every studio that becomes available, about 8 people turn up, 8 to 10 people. And that's already culled, right? From people that we think might be appropriate. So it's really hard. And it's really hard for younger artists, particularly, because what we do look at is how long you've been registered with us. So for a young artist, I would always say register sooner rather than later, because even if you don't think you need a space now, maybe you'll need one in the future. And then it's easier to be ready. And we're not the only one. I mean, I know this from all our friends in doing the same thing, providing other studio providers. They're all full. And there's just a lack of space. And we always were, as we started in the docks, it was the fringes of London. Do you know, there's one of those films where they land in a helicopter, and I remember showing it, and it's like either the GLC or the Arts Council. They traveled to the docks in a helicopter. It was that far out. It was the fringes of London. You see what I mean?
Right.
And
yes.
We moved from the fringes. We moved to Hackney from there. At that time, a fringe. Now it's like considered central London. And we're running out of these fringes. And we're running out of industrial buildings, because that's where we are. We're in these old industrial buildings mostly. Nowadays, we're also below residential and we're in other types of buildings, but our core buildings are like, old clothing factories. We're in an old perambulatory factory making, you can't imagine that being made in London, but it was.
The Purpose Pioneers is supported by Triodos Bank, which, if you didn't know, has been around for more than 40 years. I've actually been a customer of theirs for a while now. I wanted to put my money somewhere that I could trust was ethical, a bank that not only refuses to fund harmful practices, but actively invests in positive things like nature regeneration, renewable energy, community projects, and social housing. It feels really good to know that my money is funding something that I care about. Visit triodos.co.uk to find out more about the power of moving your money. What happens to artists if they can't find the affordable space that they need? Are they forced to go into other professions or just live a very frugal life? Does it affect their mental health?
Oh, of course. I think having a studio is very good for your mental health, actually. And yes, it is really hard. I don't know. I think people move out of London, and I think that is, politically speaking, on a more strategic level for a city. What kind of city do you want London to be? Then you have to provide for diversity of workspaces. I'm not saying everything needs to be turned into artist studios, but there needs to be sufficient artist studios for artists to be able to be part of the fabric of London and to make London what London is. Most tourists come here for the creative industries.
That is a very good point. That it's economic. It's not just something nice for artists to have. It's essential, actually, for the tourists to come and see all the beautiful art that they're creating.
The good number to do is here is in London, and that's the one published by the GLA, that the creative industries contribute £50 billion to the London economy and are responsible for 1 in 5 jobs in the capital. So that's quite a significant amount of money and quite a significant amount of jobs. And artists underpin this creative industry. But I don't always want to focus on this economic, because I think the well-being aspect is so important. And that's a much more ephemeral and difficult thing to pinpoint, because you can't really quantify that. And that's really hard because people try, right? They try to make social value a metric system. It's like, how many points, how many points can you put on that? How much money can you put on that? Mm-hmm. And you can't. What is a community building? What is the social value of artists? And social value is about well-being. And it's become a bit more, because people find that such a difficult concept, they have economized the social value concept. So then everything becomes numbers again. And we don't fit in that pattern, because having these spaces is also binding a community. Most of our artists live local to the studios. Some artists have moved into neighborhoods to be near their studios. That's how important studios are to them. That affects also the local schools. Because if your kids go to that school, you have artist parents, and they will help on the annual fairs, or there's like little ripple effects that are quite invisible. They help with the local charities. It is a lot of lines that kind of underpin many smaller things in London. The Tate will live on if artists leave London. The smaller galleries, the kind of the thing that makes it, the little creative juice, that will go.
It's a really good point, because you think about co-working spaces and how, that's in today's remote or hybrid working time, this time that we're living, having co-working spaces has become important, right?
Yes.
But it's knowledge workers who go to these co-working spaces, whereas what is the equivalent for the creative industries, right? So not necessarily a space where you're working together with other artists, or maybe you do, in a larger building, right? You share a space, but it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? moving on now, Eline, to your second
Yeah.
defining moment, which I feel kind of follows on from what you were talking about in terms of well-being. Can you recount a moment or experience of joy that has demonstrated to you that your work is really having an impact? So anything that kind of sticks out to you as being unexpectedly joyful or profound?
I think that there's two things. One is when I just started at Space, and I made a point of going to visit every building because, like many people, I hadn't visited many artist studios, and I went with Derek. Derek is our maintenance head of maintenance in his car, and I accompanied him to the first building, and it's a big old factory building. It has these long hallways, and off the hallways are these anonymous doors, which are pretty, we don't spend money on frills. So they're like unpainted, they're just wooden doors. And he has tons of keys. You should see the amount of keys we have in this in this office. It's incredible. And codes that he looks up before, because some people have code log. And it's quite empty because, well, there's two reasons. One, it was still the tail end of COVID. But secondly, artists come in 24/7, right? Most people, some people, not most people, actually most people have a day job. So they will come in at odd hours. So when we are there in the early mornings, this was early in the morning, it was empty. And then you open that first door and it's like entering people's minds. The first one you still think, okay, and then it's the second and it's completely different. And then the third and the fourth. And then you realize it is like you're being, as I said, in someone's brain while they are thinking. And
That's so cool.
you can see all the uncertainty and the trials and the risks and to me, failure and error, that's all part of it, right? But I'm not saying it's failure. There's beautiful things on the wall, and there's people who are super organized, and there's people who made a massive mess, but it's a mess to me, but it probably isn't to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so, I don't know, they're really amazing spaces. And then you look at that, it's like material everywhere, art hanging off the walls. Nothing makes immediate sense.
Yeah.
And I just felt really lucky to be there. It felt really special. And you can also see, and that's really kind of subtle, how sometimes the size of the studio will determine the size of the work. So people working in a really large studio can go large. And
Mm-hmm.
then if for whatever reason you need to downsize your studio, somehow your art gets downsized. And you don't even realize that when you go and look on a gallery wall later and you see those same works hanging. It's like, and then what I also always find funny is, those studios are working spaces. Their kids may be walking around. And then it gets transported to a gallery, and there's guys coming with like white gloves on, and they carefully take these works into the gallery to hang them with their white gloves. Don't touch the page, right? But while there's probably handprints all over them from the kids or from whatever, or
Yeah.
the dog that was in it.
Yeah.
We allow pets in the studio. And another thing, I mean, if you want another story, we're full of
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Yes.
Was a because I talked about the spaces, not so much about the people yet. It's quite a recent meeting I had in our Colchester space with a very young artist couple. I mean, they work together and they are a couple, Daniel and Clara, and they're just this amazing young pair of artists who just lived in Portugal for 6 years somewhere near the beach. And they now have a studio with us in Colchester that they are so happy with. And that really kind of sets them in their practice. And I think their practice is just starting. They're the young ones. We have, of course, artists of really established artists to people who are just starting out. And they do this beautiful postcard project. So I had the pleasure of speaking with them, and just the joy that they had of being able to create. And they do this postcard project called Rewilding Imagination. So they send you a postcard every month. So I signed up to that.
Mm.
And I just thought, you can see how it can really change people's lives and to have a studio.
Eline, I know you're not an artist per se, but if you did have a studio, what would it look like?
This is an interesting question. I've never thought about this. This is nice. Um, I think it would be homely and I'm quite positive usually. Um, it would be cozy.
Mm,
I would be. It wouldn't be completely muted. No, I'm not a black and white person either. It would be, but it wouldn't be very colorful because I think then my mind will go too much in too many
mhm,
directions. I need some
mhm.
calm to think.
So, Eline, we've arrived at the third moment, third defining moment, which is to recount an experience that has given you a glimpse of the future. So, a vision of where this work could lead in the future. Is there something, a person, a place, a thing, an experience that kind of represents the future for you?
It's about continuity for me. I mean, it's really, I feel this, the next generation still needs to have this space and time to begin their work and to work. At the very basic level, the situation for artists hasn't really changed that much in the past. Oh, how long are we now? 58 years? I mean, there was a lack of space then, there's a lack of space now. We are very organic, we're very flexible, we're highly reactionary in that we can pack up quickly and move to another building and make it ours. Um, I think what I've become more aware of is that it's also about time because it's about stability. It's like if you have a stable space and you do not have to pack up constantly and move around, you have time to experiment. You don't constantly think in the back of your mind, oh my God, I will have to find a new space in a month, a year, whatever. But if you don't have that thought behind you, you can really develop your practice. And I think that feels really under pressure at the moment. And it hasn't always felt under pressure, but it's more under pressure now. As I said, the fringes of London are no longer fringes. So where do we go? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
just the workspace anymore. Where are artists who are the most underpaid people in this city, even though they kind of underpin the creative economy? Where do they live these days? Yeah, and that's like a side. It's not a sideshow. It is something that really concerns me. It's not something I can do much about because that's not our remit. We don't do work live space. But it does concern me as a Londoner. It's like, how's this gonna work? Even if I
Mm,
create more workspaces, where are artists going to live? So when I think about the future, it's really about the continuity. How do we make sure that in half a century people can still walk into a studio and just create something and not being pushed out the day after or um
mm-hmm.
and that's why owning buildings matter. And that's why that is really a focus. That is what's going to keep us in this city. We cannot rely on developers or planners to always give us spaces because that's like building on quicksand. It will go.
So, do you have plans to buy more in the near future?
We have a fund and we're always looking. We were very close, quite recently, that fell through. That's the thing with properties. You can plan all you want strategically, but they still have to become available in the right place and the right time. And it's a question of, keeping our eyes open, keeping our connections going.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my role is really trying to hold that line, let it not
Mm-hmm.
disappear and buy stability because that's really the way forward. We do an artist survey and we say, what does the studio mean to you in 3 words? And it's really, really lovely. So I've got a few hundred now of answers.
What were some examples of
Um,
those 3 words?
I've printed some out because I thought it'd be really nice for this. It's like everything, creativity, happiness, headspace, quiet, messy space, make space, hope, my happy place, morning, unfinished, blue.
makes you think, well, what does that mean?
I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, to ponder. Thank you so much, Eline. This has been such an interesting conversation. It's been lovely to get to know you and hear about your journey. Thanks for joining us on The Purpose Pioneers. And a special thanks, as always, to our sponsor, Triodos Bank. That's a wrap for now.
Thank you, Sarah.